Here I am. I haven't even had time to shave because I have to go on the Disney Wish in a couple of hours. I'm fresh off the plane from Disneyland Paris. I'm back in the studio while I'm back in the state for a few hours to talk about Avengers Campus. That's the whole reason we went out to Paris, is to check out the second iteration of the Avengers Campus Marvel Land, which as of the 20th of July is now officially open in Walt Disney Studios Paris. For those unaware, Walt Disney Studios Paris, often considered the worst Disney theme park ever built. It was originally, some pieces of it were just envisioned to be part of a Disney Village expansion. That's their Disney Springs area. And then eventually, in order to keep the rights to the abundant land for more theme parks and hotels and such, Disney and the government were forced to open a second theme park, and they opened what would someone consider an unfinished theme park. They just had like lights, motors, action, and a really bad version of the backlot tour from MGM, and a couple of stage shows that essentially are in giant tents. And since 2002, when the park opened, they've been trying to fix this thing for 20 years. They tried with Toy Story Playland, which kind of just was a bunch of pretty well-themed carnival rides that helped a bit. Obviously, they opened Remy's Ratatouille Adventure long before it came to Epcot in another attempt, which was a very good attraction for that park, but still, the park was far from fixed. It's always been kind of a train wreck. And so Disney finally, when they bought out a full ownership of Disneyland Paris a couple of years ago, announced an over $1 billion plan to fix this park, a la their plans for California Adventure a couple of years ago, what they've done to Hong Kong along with the government there over the last decade or so. And so this is the first new land of what are supposed to be 3 new lands eventually. Knock on the wood part of this desk for that actually happening. 3 new lands that are supposed to open in Walt Disney Studios Paris to fix this park. So the question is, how does it stack up against the first Avengers Campus at Disney California Adventure? Is it the savior that Walt Disney Studios Paris has been waiting for? Well, it's time to find out. Get your web slingers out, kids. It's time for an honest review of Avengers Campus in Walt Disney Studios Paris. Thing doesn't work very well. Okay, so some quick background. Obviously, Disney acquired Marvel back in 2009, and since then, I think the world is anxiously anticipating how the Marvel Cinematic Universe, or the Marvel characters in general, would fit into the parks. Obviously, knowing the Universal theme park agreement, we know here at Walt Disney World, Guardians of the Galaxy is kind of the extent of the things we can get, and also a strange Doctor Strange show. No pun intended, that was at Hollywood Studios for a hot minute a couple years ago. But then, of course, as Disneyland developed plans, you could meet Marvel characters and such. There were some things thrown together rather quickly at both Disneyland Park, eventually then at DCA, and even, again, at Walt Disney Studios Paris. But then the first park that actually came through on it was Hong Kong. They got the Iron Man experience and eventually Ant-Man and the Wasp Nano Battle and some character meet and greets, all part of not an Avengers Campus. There it is part of the Stark Expo in Tomorrowland, which is a fun concept based on the Stark Expo that's part of Iron Man 2. And you're visiting these various exhibits at the expo. But then, when it was time to approach the project for both California and Paris, they decided to go in a different direction with what they called the Avengers Campus, which the idea is that the Avengers are trying to prepare the next generation of heroes by giving them the proper tools and training to be there, I guess when they're gone, which is kind of fitting given where the movie series is going. The movie series is going, the MCU is going younger, right? We're seeing a lot of the young Avengers now. So it's understandable as to why they're leaning into this Avengers Campus thing and training the next generation, and why, it's the Spider-Man attraction features a lot of young characters, and it's sort of the school campus vibe. That being said, now having been to both lands, let's dissect the Avengers Campus concept as a land, and if that is an enthralling idea. I don't think it is. I still don't think this is what people want out of Marvel. Now, Stark Expo For me, I mean, obviously as a fan, as a kid going to Epcot Center, which is sort of this permanent World's Fair, and then that connection for me growing up in New York, where in Queens there was the 1964 New York World's Fair, which was a big moment for Disney. Obviously Iron Man 2, a lot of people don't like that movie. I do because of that connection, but then also that's a really cool way to tie back into the Disney theme parks, to have sort of the Stark Expo at the parks. So in concept, I love that idea. The two Hong Kong attractions are not great. I don't love either of them. They're obviously both heavily screen-based. They have no animatronics. You know, they're fine. And then you kind of get more of the same of that later on. And it turns out really the only two Marvel attractions I have fallen in love with thus far are both based around Guardians of the Galaxy, and I think most of the world has agreed at this point. Mission Breakout and Cosmic Rewind, the two best Marvel attractions Disney has built. Obviously, the best Spider-Man attraction anyone has ever built. I think the world also in agreement. The Amazing Adventures of Spider-Man at Islands of Adventure, which won all sorts of awards, was clearly the headliner of that park. It's still a headliner. People love it. And let's be honest, I hate to do this, but that captures more of what I expect out of a Marvel attraction, right? Like, you want to be in the middle of the action you've always dreamed of being in the middle of. In the Spider-Man ride at Universal, you meet Spider-Man, and then basically this rogues gallery of very famous villains from Spider-Man's collection are there, and you're in the middle of that fight, right? And then the two Guardians attractions kind of accomplish that, right? The Collector's Fortress has, the Collector works as a villain. I like a lot of the ancillary characters and creatures that show up, and the Guardians carry that really well. And then they have a villain, maybe not, the most recognizable villain in Cosmic Rewind, but nonetheless, there's a big bad to work off of, right? And Avengers Campus neither version seems to get that. So let's start with the ride. So first of all, both Avengers Campus lands have what's called in California Web Slingers, a Spider-Man adventure, and what is Spider-Man Web Adventure. Try to keep up in Walt Disney Studios Paris, which is this AR, augmented reality shooter ride where you get to sling webs. So first of all, technology-wise, it's cool. Like, it's cool that you do this and things happen, and it's cool that in theory you could buy this add-on to do better on the ride, but it turns out you do worse every time you use it, in my case is what happens, or it doesn't seem to really work all that well. This is kind of junky, these things. But for the attraction itself, technology-wise, it works well. It's a cool novelty. It has no reason to be a ride, right? There's no reason for it to be a ride because you're just traveling from screen to screen, and there's very little in the way of physical props. So the fact is, like, if I go from one set of screens to another and there's nothing really to look at in between, why couldn't that have been a stationary experience where I'm in like a motion simulator based thing doing this, right? Why did it have to be this giant building and a ride? There's really no reason. Again, I don't think it's a great attraction. I think it is a fun game, but as an attraction, I think it really falls short of what people want. I think that's why it hasn't been as big a success in California as they thought it was going to be. The difference here is California Adventure has a lot going for it, right? It has Mission Breakout, it has Cars Land, it has a lot of really good stuff that people show up for. This park has had problems drawing people for a long time. A new ride in this park is a great thing. It's a park that does not have Toy Story Midway Mania, which is basically the non-AR version of the Web Slinger ride. So I think it's good for the portfolio of that park. I think it works in Paris. It's still not going to be my favorite ride, but I think it accomplishes something for them. So I'm not mad that it's there. Again, I think kids will like it, but it's not what you expect. I don't like Remy's Ratatouille Adventure. I still think that's probably, that and Tower of Terror are the two best rides in that park, still, even after Avengers Campus has opened at this point. The other ride is Avengers Assemble Flight Force, which is a retheme of what was Rock and Roller Coaster Avec Aerosmith, a slightly different version of the ride from Hollywood Studios. set up the backstory of this. This was the worst land in the worst Disney theme park ever built. This backlot area, to the point of, there's a famous story of an Imagineer being brought into the park for the first time from backstage, and he's like, well, when are we going to be on stage in the park? And the other Imagineer turns to him and goes, you are. And you're like, oh. So they were actually on stage in the park, and the Imagineer didn't realize it because it was that ugly. It was a lot of black pavement and just stucco walls. And if you thought California Adventure was bad in 2001, Walt Disney Studios Paris, whole nother level. So obviously anything you do here, any amount of money you're going to spend here, you're going to improve this. You're going to improve this situation on this side of the park. So Web Adventure against Armageddon, which I love for its campiness, this special effects attraction that used to be in that space. Obviously, Web Adventure is a better attraction. I cannot argue that. And I think the same can be said for Flight Force over Rock and Roller Coaster. It brings the first animatronic in the history of this park. They now have one. Here it is. It's Iron Man in the pre-show, which is a solid pre-show, right? It's great to see an animatronic here. I'm glad they finally did it. The other thing, it's a big deal. We were talking to some of our readers and viewers while we're at the previews of the land, and they made a great point. And the great point is they were so excited to see Brie Larson actually in the attraction, because to them that always felt like a thing that the U.S. and the other parks would get, is if there was a movie attraction, there'd be these big celebrities in it, and they feel like they never get that. And that's a great point. So I think that's great that there is that real connection to the MCU. Like Brie Larson is actually, and she's in a lot of it too. We'll talk about whether the character's likable or not, because her and Tony are just kind of mean to each other the whole time. I don't think either of them are real endearing in the course of this attraction. But it's cool that that's a thing. So you have the first animatronic, a really big A-list celebrity in a theme park attraction, are both here. You've built, you built a facade in front of the big ugly warehouse that used to be there. The Quinjet's there by the entrance. The queue is definitely a lot nicer with the big Avengers A, and there's a window that looks out at the launch area. But then there's some places where it's still apparent that the budget wasn't there, right? So the load area still has a lot of what was Rock and Roller Coaster with the steel grating floors, and they kept the like sound booth, which is the control booth, and so a lot of Rock and Roller Coaster is still there. And then the big complaint from the annual pass holders, at least, and I think it's a valid complaint, has been that the ride is just it's very dark. It's Rock and Roller Coaster with very, very little added other than some projection spaces. That being said, again, like I said in our honest review of Cosmic Rewind, they have come a long way in their ability to pre-plan projections along a very fast roller coaster track to the point at which they make sure most people in the train can see everything that's going on. I remember again, like Space Mountain, Ghost Galaxy, those earlier iterations of we're going to put projections along the coaster track. I remember like sometimes you see it, sometimes you don't. The timing's not always great. With Cosmic Rewind and now this, they've gotten to the point where they know before they build it how it's going to look. That being said, front row, don't sit in the front row. You miss a lot. Any row behind that, you're probably fine. The trains themselves got a big glow up, literally, as you have the sort of triangular arc reactor on the hood, and they look like Iron Man, the trains. They're fun. But the big problem is, like, how many times have they done space coasters? And the other trademark of them is that there's stars everywhere. This Flight Force doesn't do that. There's not stars everywhere. So you're supposed to be in space, but the only time you see anything is when there's projections where there's one of Earth and there's, the occasional fly-in from Iron Man, Captain America, and then the thing you're trying to stop. Again, no singular recognizable villain here. They're just Kree warheads. So just a bunch of Kree alien missiles are coming towards Earth, and that's the basic story. But again, they're Rock and Roll. So imagine Rock and Roller Coaster at Hollywood Studios with even less to look at. I know that's going to be hard to fathom because already it's just a bunch of like sort of cardboard flats. I like Rock and Roller Coaster at MGM, Hollywood Studios. It's campy though, right? So imagine the version in Paris was just stage lighting. So instead of like a big donut or a Hollywood sign or anything like that, there was just like rock and roll concert lighting that just sort of spun by you. That was it. So in this case, where there's now actually a real story and there's things to see, it's definitely an improvement. Is it a huge improvement? No. Queue, facade, and pre-show wise, a giant improvement. Way, way better than what was there previously. The other thing I like is there's been this fight to not tie together all the Marvel theme park stuff. So there's two universes, right? The Marvel Cinematic Universe is not actually the same universe as the Marvel theme park universe. So Guardians of the Galaxy, Cosmic Rewind, Mission Breakout, Campus, Stark Expo, all these things do not connect to the MCU, despite the fact that they have MCU characters and a lot of MCU references. This is meant to be a whole different timeline. You know, we're getting into the multiverse here, I guess. And so there's been very little connective tissue other than the fact that at one point at DCA there were posters up for the Hong Kong Stark Expo. I think before the backlot closed in Paris, there were posters again for the Hong Kong Stark Expo. Little things like that, but not a lot of connective tissue. In the first pre-show of Flight Force, there is a lot of connective tissue, which I think is great. So the storyline is that you're only getting called in to help with this mission because all the other Avengers are busy. And how do you explain that the other Avengers are busy? Well, you show them fighting in their other attractions around the world. So in this pre-show, Iron Man will talk to Friday, who is the AI assistant in this campus. And Friday is trying to go through essentially the Rolodex of Avengers of who can help. And so Ant-Man comes up and they call Ant-Man and he's in the middle of the Ant-Man and the Wasp nano battle attraction. It's clearly a scene right out of that. They try to call Captain America. At this point is not Steve Rogers. It's the new Captain America. He is busy with Miss Marvel on the cruise line on the Disney Wish. They're in Quantum Encounter, which is also just debuting now as well, and where I have to be in like 5 hours. And then there's also a bit for Mission Breakout where he tries to get the Guardians of the Galaxy, but Rocket is in the midst of trying to break out the Guardians. He's a little busy. He can't help him. And so that's why Captain Marvel is rushing to try to help, but the story is she may not make it in time, so he may have to come up with another plan, which is why we're being called in these Stark vehicles to sort of guide the missiles off course, if you will. So story-wise, not the strongest, but I do like that we're actually connecting the tissue and building a universe, right? People really like that in the movie and Disney Plus series, right? So, you know, guests will like that here too. You know, even if they haven't visited the other ones, there's an awareness of all that. So let's build that universe, right? We won't get into the fact that there's some problems there, right? Because Ant-Man and the Wasp nano battle is supposed to take place at the same exact time as the Iron Man experience, which is now not happening at the same time in this story because Iron Man's instead here in Paris dealing with this problem. So, but we won't get into that. We won't get into that now. Either way, a nice improvement overall for the attraction. I know a lot of people are very happy about the facade. It's definitely an improvement for sure. I don't think the facades are great. I think for a park whose reputation has been that it kind of was a lot of pavement, a lot of dark black or gray pavement and stucco and kind of industrial looking, to build an Avengers campus, which in story is industrial looking, doesn't really necessarily help the reputation of this park. That being said, I think the rest of the land is so rich in story detail that it gets away with it. And I know Frozen is coming and the little Tangled Spinner ride is coming, and then eventually some third land, which may or may not be Star Wars at this point, will come and introduce more of that fantasy element and take us more out of the real world and the industrial look. But I don't think the Flight Force facade does that. I think that doesn't take me to this place. It looks a lot like the NBA experience. It looks a lot like a modern sports stadium. And the fact that like the Friday AI lighting, so the facade lights up as if Friday is speaking through it. And so she'll be present through like sort of this illuminated ring, which is just done from like LED lights behind. So, I mean, not even really like the latest in technology, right? We live in a world where everyone's doing these big wraparound screens. And I know we complain about screens, but if you're going to do this sort of effect rather than sort of this antiquated LED lighting technology, it probably should have been some sort of screen or projection surface in this case. And instead it just kind of looks like it was built like 5 or 6 years ago. And again, looks like a sports stadium. I'm not wild about it. That, and there's a lot of the same pavers in the land. Like I know they did pavers over pavement, which is an upgrade again for that section, but it just repeats so much, just these gray pattern with these little reflective tiles every once in a while. Those are the things I would have tried to change a little bit, but I know people in Paris will say we're nitpicking because I get it, right? You have to understand, this is a place where they do not get new rides very often. The last new ride to open was Ratatouille. That was in 2014. That was 8 years ago. Think about here at Walt Disney World, how many rides have opened in just the last 2 or 3 years. I won't talk about the quality of them, but nonetheless, how many rides have opened in the last 2 or 3 years? We've opened more rides than Paris has opened probably since 1995, just in the last 2 years. So obviously they're very happy to just have new things. I get that. I respect that. I understand that. But at the same time, I have to give you the good and the bad, right? Like obviously, I think there's a lot of good about this project, but there are some things I would have hoped were done differently. And this facade is one of those things. That being said, even though it is industrial, I think this is the better version of Avengers Campus. I think they have a better all-around land than California does. The layout is way more functional. It's this straight alley up, and you have this cross section, goes down 2 side streets, which is way better than whatever it does in California, which is this weird sort of back alley, which is the main entrance somehow, and ruins Cars Land, and then turns into sort of a meeting space in the middle, but then shoots off into these weird side paths again, that one goes to the space building. It's very, the California layout's just very weird. Here it all seems to make sense. It all, I don't know, this big Web Industries building across from the PIM kitchen, and then there's a Stark factory down here, and it's laid out a lot more effectively. And then the story details, I think, are just better. I think there's just more story detailing throughout the land. There's definitely more to look at. There's more interior spaces, and the added interior spaces are better than they are in California. So PIM Kitchen, maybe not food-wise, but at the very least concept-wise, is way stronger. And like it has to be viewed as a flop in California, right? Because it's just the quantum tunnel, which is the best part, right? The quantum tunnel's super cool, but it's just the pickup area. And then you go off to the sides, and there are those very cool giant ketchup bottles and giant sodas, but you get your drink station. But then it's a very small outdoor seating area that was not built big enough to serve the restaurant. And so it's always a mess out there, and there's no real cool elements other than the menu boards that are giant cell phones there. Here it was really done right. You still enter through that quantum tunnel, and the detailing inside is really top notch. There's not so much of the giant props going on, but instead the buffet really tells the story with the giant food. And then at your table, they're giving you beakers. They're bringing you drinks in beakers and flasks, and there's graph paper napkins and these really cool placemats, as if Cassie Lang, his daughter, Ant-Man's daughter, has drawn them. There's a lot of cool detailing there. Everyone's dressed in lab coats, and It really effectively tells the story, which I don't think you get other than the fact that there's a tunnel and it's supposed to be an Ant-Man restaurant in California. And then the fact that there's a whole second full counter service facility in Stark Factory that tells a whole different story, and then has, I think, of all the Marvel lands Disney has built, or all the Marvel attractions Disney has built, the 2 rooms with the most Disney detailing. The fact that they built that Tony found this secret SHIELD facility back when it was SSR, and Peggy Carter's desk is there, and Howard Stark's collection of Captain America memorabilia is there, and then there's clearly what was like a weapons testing room for the SSR behind that. Those 2 rooms are so super detailed and feel to me like the Imagineering of Pandora and earlier, right? We went on a really good run from like 2009 to Pandora in 2017. We went on this great run where it seemed like they were allowed to build detail and spend the money and do things right. Those 2 rooms really remind me of that era of Imagineering before we got into sort of, not that Galaxy's Edge doesn't have it, but a lot was cut away from that. The detailing I think we've hoped to see in the last couple of projects that maybe wasn't there, where the rooms are kind of barren. And there are times in campus where that happens too. It's definitely, part of the Chapek era. But those 2 rooms have that detail. The tables you can eat on in the office space they have a whole different finish where they look like old desks, and then they actually have these side pieces that complete the desk look. It's fantastic. The room is fantastic. You could eat around Peggy Carter's desk, and there's all these really great dimensional props. It's fantastic. It's the highlight of the land. Not to mention the big Hulkbuster statue upon entry is beautiful. It's a great piece. The other side of the restaurant's a little barren. It is that factory setting. There's a couple props here and there. But the Hulkbuster and those other 2 rooms really carry the space. It's enough. I would have liked more, but it's enough to where it feels of value, if that makes sense. So there are those story moments for sure. Quick thoughts on the food, because there is a video coming of all the food. We tried everything at PIM, everything at Stark Factory, everything at the Worldwide Eating Brigade, and as well the Super Diner, which is the former Café de Cascadeurs, which is a real New Jersey diner that was purchased and shipped to Paris and put in the park, and now is the Super Diner, which is really cool. We have a video that's just me reviewing those. So I'm not going to talk about the food in depth. I will say this. In some cases, it's a big step up for them food-wise, and in some cases, it's more of the usual from them. And in most cases, it really depends when you eat there, because sometimes in Paris, people don't come for a little bit, and the food sits there, and it gets old, and they still serve it. So, but go watch that if you want to hear more about the food. But as far as like the spaces for PIM Kitchen and Stark Factory, they're cool interiors. They're fun spaces to spend time in. And again, the land in total, I like the detailing more, and it feels, the staging is also way better, right? They didn't put the Quinjet up on this building at a weird angle to where everyone's like looking up like this. Like, I think that's the Quinjet. Like, you could actually get a picture of the Quinjet at a lower vantage point, nicer angle. You could see it from the outside queue of Flight Force as well, which is a nice touch. And then the characters, when they're there, you could actually get decent pictures. They're not too far away. And then the web building has a much wider show space on the roof than it does in California, than the Avengers headquarters building in California does. So Spider-Man does all sorts of different shows where sometimes when we arrived in the morning, he was sitting on top of it was the coolest thing. You arrive into the land, and who's greeting you? Spider-Man on top of the building. And with OSHA and other safety laws being very different in France, Spider-Man could be more like Spider-Man. So he's just sitting on the edge of the building. There's no rail. Obviously, he's got a wire attached. You can't see that. I didn't want you to worry about the safety of the actor. But he's just sitting on the edge of the building, just like right out of the advertisements for a Spider-Man movie. He's sitting on the edge of the building. He's waving. He does the thing where he kind of like is sleeping on the side of the building. You're arriving and Spider-Man's yelling down like, hey, you in the blue shirt, and stuff like that. As you arrive, it is a fantastic way to arrive in the land. And I assume every morning they're going to do a little bit of that. But then also they don't have the Stuntronic here, but they really make up for it with the performance of the actor. They do way more stunts on their own, a lot of real gymnastics. It's impressive and fun, and there's smoke effects and things that happen. Like, I love the Stuntronic. Easily, it's the highlight in California, but there's something special about seeing, real Spider-Man roll all over the roof and spin on stuff and swing around, and it's a lot of fun. But all in all, the vantage points, the way the land is laid out, allows the shows to be seen a lot better than they are in California, where I feel like no one ever feels like they have a good view of that Black Widow, Black Panther stunt show there. But I felt I could actually see what was going on in France, which is great. And that's the highlight of this land on either coast is the characters, right? Other than the Stuntronic, which still falls into that a bit. This is a land where the entertainment budget gets to be more robust than any land has gotten to be in a very long time, right? We didn't get to have that for Galaxy's Edge. We were promised aliens and droids walking around, interacting with us. That does actually exist in Avengers Campus. They come, they walk around the campus ground and actually stop for photos and interact, even beyond the staged meet and greets, right? So in the Paris campus, there is outside of PIM, there is a meet and greet facility where Ant-Man and the Wasp show up, and there's a line there, and you can wait in line to meet them there. But they'll also just walk around the land at different times of day, as will Thor and Loki and all other Avengers. Spider-Man will come down and walk around too. Then they'll appear up there, or then you could go meet them in the training center, which the training center, first off, again, we're talking about bad facades. The training center is one of the worst facades in Disney theme park history. It is clear glass. It's a box. You could see through it. And then the show building behind it, which they've now covered essentially the Lights, Motors, Action, or Motors Action, as it was known there, theater, in this really bad-looking tarp thing. And the meet and greet facility itself is just what was the kind of tool shed. I don't know if you remember, if you went to Hollywood Studios and saw Lights, Motors, Action, when you would queue, you'd walk around sort of this tool shed building, the workshop where they work on the cars. So this training center is just in that building. They've converted it. And so the facade looks like that. It's like, well, we didn't want to touch that building. We threw some tarps over it, and then we threw up this glass wall, to hide that this was something else and to hide that theater is still back there. And so I wasn't expecting a lot. But then once inside, it is a beautiful facility. The waiting area is great. So you come, the way it works, there's a QR code outside. You scan it, you get essentially in your app, it'll tell you when to come back. It's a virtual queue. Tell you when to come back. When it's time to come back, you come in, you wait for a few moments. They have benches there if you want to wait on the benches. Really nice room, white marble, some pictures to look at. And there's someone there to page you. A cast member pages you when it's time, and you go into one of the two queues, and then you go into these rooms, which are super detailed and really, really nice. You go past these lockers, which have all the names of the different Avengers, and then the peek you get into the meet and greet with the people ahead of you, there's one clear panel of glass with this cool screen that shows you how the experience will work, get you ready for it. But then the other two panes have all these projections in them. So it looks very much like something out of the films, like as if you were in the Avengers headquarters or on the the Quinjet. It's really, really neat. And then the room itself, once you go into the actual meet and greet room with the character, it's again super detailed, like completely 360 degrees of immersion in there. You are in that place. And then the performers themselves, everyone was beyond fantastic, and this cannot be undersold enough. The magic of Disneyland Paris is the fact that those characters have to interact with people that speak all sorts of different languages. So in order to be a character performer there, you have to speak several languages. And so the character handler will come to you before you go in the room and be like, English? And obviously we look like we speak English, so it's English? Yes, we speak English. And so the characters will greet us and talk to us in English, which with Iron Man, because it's armor, it's an interactive meet and greet a la Darth Vader or those meet and greets where there's a bunch of pre-recorded phrases that they can trigger. And so I think the tech is cool that they could just swap between languages that quickly. But then the real magic is that the face character performers just do that themselves. They just automatically are able to meet guests from all different parts of the globe that speak different languages all in a row seamlessly, and you feel like you met that character for real. It's great. So like Captain Marvel we met was great, and Iron Man was great, and the facility is top notch. The PhotoPass photos came out great, and the coolest thing, even if they are charging extra for it, because I have PhotoPass included with my annual pass, but we have to pay extra for this sort of 180-degree moving video picture. So they have set up a bunch of cameras on the other side of the room, and they'll prep you for it, and then you and the hero get in like an action pose, and all these cameras in a row go off, and then you get this video that is this panning series of photos. So you get this like 180-degree view of you in an action pose with the hero, which is cool. It's very cool. It's a great facility, great experience. You don't have to wait in a queue. It's super detailed, top-notch technology. Everything about the meet and greet was for me, the highlight of the Paris land was the meet and greet facility. But again, the highlight of Avengers Campus on either in California or here is that these characters are always around. There's always a different show happening. And you could spend most of the day in this land and still not see all of the different little character shows there are. There is a really fun show with Thor and Loki where it's very much like the old Sword in the Stone show that was in the fantasy lands around the world where someone can pull the sword from the stone. In this case, some child will be deemed worthy and be able to pull the hammer after, of course, the first time they try, the hammer doesn't move, and then they're deemed worthy and they can pull the hammer. And then Loki shows up and says he's also trying to recruit some followers like Thor is, but for very different purposes. There is the awesome mixed dance-off shows, which is very similar to the one in California with the Guardians of the Galaxy. There is, again, the Dora Milaje show, the Warriors from Wakanda, which I kind of like this version better. I think it's more fun. You can watch these all in full right here on the channel. I don't have to explain them too much. And then there's the Black Widow and Black Panther stunt show, slightly modified, is available. There's a couple different versions of the Spider-Man show, little short things where he comes out in waves and swings on stuff and smoke spews out from the rooftops, things like that. And then there's the Avengers Assemble show. Park open up to just about park close. There's entertainment to be seen, which is a great thing. Entertainment, a big part of that Disney parks magic, right? I think we've covered a lot of ground, right? We talked about the meet and greets. We talked about the attractions. We talked about the restaurants as much as we can outside. That video is long enough. I don't need to get into that. We've talked about the land itself. That's more detailed. The only thing I will say is, like, again, when they fixed California Adventure, when they went to fix California Adventure, there were no corners cut because it was realized that this park has a very bad reputation. We have got to go all out. So it was like, all right, we are going to put a lot of money into Paradise Pier and make that look better. We are going to build a top-notch nighttime spectacular that will not be replicated anywhere else. We're going to build a beautiful entry area that will not be replicated anywhere else in Buena Vista Street. And we're going to build Cars Land, which again will not be replicated anywhere else, with this great e-ticket and all this immersive detailing and this giant mountain range. And I think that's what was so important. Same thing with the Hong Kong expansion. It was, we're going to build 3 lands. Yeah, they built Toy Story Land, but then they also built Grizzly Gulch, which is this really fun coaster, unique to the park, beautiful mountain, little western town. And then Mystic Manor, which I think is the greatest Disney ride on earth, and again, is exclusive to Hong Kong. In this case, none of this expansion plan includes anything exclusive that is going to pull people to come here, right? Like, it's definitely going to help with the European crowd. There's definitely going to be more reasons for them to visit this park. But again, Flight Force is not wholly unique. It's a retheme of Rock and Roller Coaster, and it's not a huge upgrade like Mission Breakout was over the sort of subpar Tower of Terror, right? And then Web Slingers is not exclusive either, and The characters are not, there's no exclusive e-ticket here. The Frozen Land has Frozen Ever After, which by the time it opens will be probably 10 years old at Epcot. And I think the only original thing they're getting in this whole expansion is that Tangled Spinner ride, which is not going to be a huge draw either. And then again, the original plan had a portion of Galaxy's Edge, which was all recycled. I think all of these parks around the world need to have things that are unique e-ticket draws for them, something that makes them special. This park doesn't have much that makes it special. And they've replicated a lot of the stuff that Ratatouille was an attempt to make the park special, and they replicated a lot of it. To the point at which I think the only things that feel special in this park is Bistro Chez Remy, the sit-down restaurant that we did not get at Epcot. And now in the case of this land, like Pim Kitchen, because it's wholly unique, feels special, but I just don't understand this. And then beyond that, like, there's a lot of detailing in this land, but this is not Pandora. This is not Galaxy's Edge. This is not Cars Land. This is not on the level of those things. Considering the things we've got in the last couple of years, it's better than a lot. For this park, it is a huge upgrade. Undeniably a step in the right direction that will succeed. This land will be full. It will close at capacity, I'm sure, a bunch the next year or so. So it will be a success, but from an artistic standpoint, from a quality standpoint, it is not the best they can do. It is still not, they've still not captured what is the best they can do with characters that aren't the Guardians of the Galaxy as far as the MCU is concerned, because I still don't think they've hit the nail on the head for any attractions beyond those two. I think all their other Marvel rides are kind of not what you wanted. They're not what you wanted them to be. You wanted to, yeah, you want to sling webs with Spider-Man, but you probably want to sling them at like one of his arch enemies in like some major battle, right? Or could you imagine a Spider-Man ride that puts you in No Way Home where could you imagine slinging webs along with all three of the movie Spider-Men? Wouldn't that be the most amazing thing? And then imagine you're battling all the Sinister Six. Like how fantastic would that be? Would you not fly, possibly save money and fly halfway across the world to see that ride? I would. I would pinch pennies to do that. That's not what we're getting here. And again, like there are areas where it still feels like Walt Disney Studios Paris. That main thoroughfare, the main avenue, big glow up, certainly looks better. I think the PIM lab building exterior I love. I don't know, the test facility thing and the quantum tunnel, like it's a nice looking building. The web building's fine. It's all right. But then like the two back alleys, like the Stark Factory facade is still the Blockbuster Cafe facade. It looks like Backlot Express from Hollywood Studios. It's a warehouse. And then on the other side, you have that training center facade, which is just like this weird glass box. Then you have like you have two food trucks, some unthemed walls, and then a diner. And then that's going to lead out to this, what's supposed to be this beautiful lake area. That's part of the expansion that'll have this Art Nouveau style restaurant and the Tangled ride and the Frozen area, which honestly from the art, the Frozen area looks like it'll be a big step up from this, which is great because this park needs more fantasy. It needs more fantastical landscapes and architecture to take you away from what the park has been, which is pavement and stucco and concrete, which sadly Avengers Campus has a lot of. Because they kind of exist in our real world. I get that. Final verdict is this is a huge win for that park, regardless of the fact that the rides are not the most top-notch things, regardless of the fact that some sections of it still look kind of on the cheap. Despite those things, the fact that this park now has a bunch of entertainment with characters running around and a bunch of new shows, the fact that they have a new ride, they have theming, which, you know, while it's, again, not the most thematic land ever, it is way more theming than that park has seen in most areas of it. Look at Cars Road Trip, for an example. It's pretty bad. You know, it's a big step up, and it's going to work, right? People love Avengers. I just think there's going to be this slight disappointment that it's not all it can be. Like, they have not cooked up an Avengers e-ticket that is what the world has waited for this being the biggest film franchise in the world that continues to make hundreds of millions of dollars, sometimes billions of dollars per film, that sells Disney Plus subscriptions. The fact that no one in this company has yet been willing to go all in on a big e-ticket adventure, and they pulled the plug on it in Hong Kong for forever, and they're not willing to talk about if they're ever going to do it in California, and it's not planned to come to here. You know, it's just not all it can be. And as Disney fans, that's what we want. We know what they are capable of. We knew what they were capable of back in the day when Walt Disney was pulling artists out of the animation studio and telling them, you make theme parks now. And they're like, I guess so. Look what those people did. But now you're talking about 65 years of infrastructure, a company that now has billions of dollars. There is no limit to what they can accomplish. And if you want to show the world that we're going to fix this park, Cars Land is the standard. Like Cars Land, Buena Vista Street, World of Color, that DCA expansion is the standard of how to fix a bad Disney park. And this is a step lower. This is not that. This plan in total is not, and this land is not that. But in the end, again, to end on positivity, Pym Kitchen's a big upgrade. Stark Factory, at least in its interior, maybe not in the food quality, is a big upgrade. Flight Force is an upgrade. Web Adventure is an upgrade. The land's an upgrade. Having entertainment in this park, a lot of it is an upgrade. And the fact it's going to draw people. And it's great that it'll draw people, because I will tell you this, Disneyland Paris, the original park, Disneyland Park, is still one of my favorite, if not that and Disney Sea, are the two best parks they have ever built. And maybe Epcot Center, which doesn't exist anymore. Those parks are so special and unique and beautiful. That park is so beautiful. So if this draws people in, and then as a byproduct, they get to go see the original park and how beautiful and special that is, that's a great thing. And you should too. If this is something that excites you, if you're a Marvel fan, and this does look exciting to you, I'm really happy for you. I'm not here to knock what other people love. I just still think that on your behalf, I don't think they've captured all of the magic and spectacle of the film series in an attraction, where Rise of the Resistance does capture that for Star Wars fans. There is nothing yet in these lands that has captured that for the Marvel fan, right? That's where I'm kind of stuck at this point. And again, I still want them to be a little more thematic. So maybe, you know, if you want to build that Wakanda land, let's do it. That would be way more thematic. I'm on board. Give me a Wakanda land e-ticket. Let's do it. But nonetheless, the beginning of a great time for Walt Disney Studios Paris as they expand, and there's some good stuff on the horizon. Not unique stuff, but good stuff, and some steps in the right direction. This will certainly make me spend a lot more time in that park than I had to this point. So go check it out. As of July 20th, Avengers Campus now open at Walt Disney Studios Paris.